All right, folks, I'm starting on the outside as per tradition, but I'm going to go immediately in because we've got some wind here. What I've been hard at work at doing is all the electrical and plumbing roughs. You can see we've got a couple of porch sconces roughed in here and an outlet box. And you can see a couple of more sconces up next to that door, as well as a couple of vents running through the roof. One of them is hot water heater exhaust, one is intake, one is plumbing vent. Those pipes were a little long. I haven't had a chance to cut them down yet. Figured I'd run the inside and then trim those so I didn't end up like 2 inches short and having to rerun them. So this way they're through the roof and ready to go. I'm going to step inside so we get out of the wind. And what you'll see is that I've got a lot of works in progress. So here's some wires that aren't like nailed down, stapled down. You can put two NMB wires under one staple. So I'm just waiting to get some of the other wires run in here so I can get some neat stapling going. But I have also done some part scattering. So you can see in all the spots where there are going to be outlets, we've got outlets hanging from the box, ready to install so that when I'm ready to wire them in, I can go do that. Coming into here, got a little bit of spill on the floor, not to worry. This is a diesel heater, having a little fun with this. This thing's 80,000 BTUs, and although it takes a few hours, it is strong enough to heat the house. So I'm not really worried about me. I'm more worried about like the materials. PVC is more brittle in the cold. Tools are harder to handle in the cold. Everything is just harder to do when it's cold. Insulation is stiff and everything else. So it is a little nicer if I can get the place up to about 50, 55. That's where I've got it right now at about 50, and I'm happy with that. Not super worried about getting it any higher. Here we've got our shear wall, and that sure is a beastie. I know it looks a little crazy. That is a wall running down the middle of the house. And the reason is that from this direction here is the mountain. So that's Mount Blanca and Lindsay. Those are the two 14ers here. And up over that ridge is Great Sand Dunes National Park. So we get a lot of wind from that direction. Prevailing wind direction is towards us facing this way, and it pushes on the house a lot. So the house really gets a lot of wind pressure there. And even if you're designing for like 130 mile an hour wind gusts, we have a prevailing wind here that is just steady. So you can imagine over the years, if you just backed a pickup truck against the house, stuck it in reverse, and left it running the entire time, constantly pushing, sooner or later the house isn't going to be able to take that anymore. So this is a little bit of overkill here, and I still have a little bit of a patch bit in the middle to do and up over on the end, but I've got just about all the brace wall panel installed, and I left a little bit of room at the top here for wiring and sheathing and insulation and all the rest of that. So we'll, have some gimbal lights here. We've already got them. This will be all a cathedral ceiling here, and we will have these gimbaled lights that you can see. If I can do it by hand, they can be tilted to angle down. So, if the roof is kind of angled this direction, you can get a nice downlight from that. So the kitchen is coming together here. And I have been hard at work on, as I said, plumbing and electrical. I now have electrical sort of in progress and plumbing well in progress. This is going to be where the kitchen sink goes. You can see I've got the drain coming down, the stub coming out, and the P-trap will be, inside a cabinet here. That's an outlet for a dishwasher and a garbage disposal. We're on septic, so we won't be using like a traditional garbage disposal, but there is a unit, I forgot the company's name, starts with an S, but it installs under your sink, works the same way. You can still put your food scraps down, so it's super convenient, but it's sort of a strainer. Kind of an automatic kitty litter cleaning situation where, it periodically scrapes the material like once a day or something into a little holding basket. You put that in your compost pile. So it keeps the bulk solid food waste out of the septic, which is good for the septic, but still gives you all the convenience of that. So you can see here, I've run my vent pipe through the wall here, and rather than kind of come over and up and over twice, I just ran it straight into the utility room. Got some stud shoes here to make up for the fact that I did cut those. This is a load-bearing wall. There is not a huge amount of load on it because instead of a ridge board, I have a structural ridge beam, and I actually have 2 of them. So this is actually carrying only like a quarter of the total roof load, but still in all, I wanted an extra strength in there, so I got the stud shoes in. You can see over here, I've started a little bit of additional kitchen plumbing with the gas as well. That's going to be a gas box and an outlet. The range will go right here in the center. You can see the marking for stove and the marking over there for stove. So this is kind of centered behind where the stove's going to be. And then obviously we'll have an exhaust vent or an exhaust hood above that that goes into the utility room and out under the soffit. So coming over into the other rooms, got a couple of three-way switches going in. We've got some more electrical wiring going in. I've been waiting to wire the place because I wanted to get the plumbing in first and have a little bit of room to kind of sneak the Romex around it. But I do have some wiring in my office done, and I can turn on the lights and actually see that effect, so that's kind of nice. And then coming down here into the back master, I am only scattering materials out. This is the next thing that I'm working on for plumbing. What I've been doing plumbing-wise is working on the utility room. So sorry this is such a mess. I've got parts all over the place, but just walk through this with me here. Let's start with electrical. So the electrical system is basically in and operational. Obviously, I've got to tear it down and pull some pieces out when I go for the rough inspection, but it's immensely helpful being able to run that heater and these lights over here while I'm working in the utility room, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit. Shh, don't tell anybody. But this is an EG4 system. It's an all-in-one. That's the big battery. This is a 280 amp hour 52 volt battery, so it's just a huge battery for the house, and you can see there's room for one more. They do allow you to install the batteries side by side, so I put the backer board here that require a non-combustible surface behind it, and this way if I want to dummy up and add a battery, I can do that here, and I also have room along the back wall. If I really need to expand, I could add a third battery in a pinch. You can also parallel the inverters, but it's a 12,000 watt inverter, and honestly, it's really hard to imagine us having loads that will exceed that. We're not charging Teslas or running heat pumps and stuff like that. We got a propane furnace going in, and that would be the biggest load. There might be some AC loads, some cooling loads during the summer, but they're pretty minimal. We get, I think, like 300 heating days a year, maybe 60 cooling days. And honestly, it doesn't really get much over like 90, 95 degrees here, which sounds a little hot, but it's plenty manageable. You get some breezes in the morning and the evening. Got the electrical panel in here, and probably $1,000 worth of breakers because we've got the combo AFCI GFCI breakers, and I started to run some electrical down here. You can see I've got some circuits going in. All the circuits are set up so that I've got 20 amp feeders, and many of the outlets will be on those 20 amp circuits, and not because the circuit's going to be 20 amp. These are 15 amp outlets, but just because this gives me room for future expansion. You can do it one way, not the other way. You can put 15 amp outlets on 12 gauge, even with a 20 amp breaker, but you cannot do it the other way around. You can't put a 20 amp breaker on a 15 amp circuit for obvious reasons. So this is one of those things here where I'm only going to be putting 15 amp outlets in here. So all of this stuff will be safe and under the load maximum. But if I ever needed to expand, and I did want to put like some exterior outlet for some high draw, it's hard to imagine, I don't know, electric pizza oven, whatever. If I need the extra capacity, I'll be able to use this because I got 12 gauge in here, and I'll be able to tap off of that. That circuit runs around here through the bedroom, runs around behind all these outlets. This is the master closet, and you'll see we've got some outlets and stuff for lights. This outlet's a little bit up off the floor. It used to be down there. You can see the mark of where it was, and the reason for that is that my partner would like to put a bit of a dressing table over here. So rather than just having his and hers, I honestly, candidly, need less storage than she does. So I think that what will happen is I'll end up giving up some of my closet to a little bit of storage. Maybe we'll even put a safe in there or something along those lines. And she'll have part of this be closet and part of this be dressing table. So it gives her a nice, convenient place to get ready. And then that circuit comes all the way in here and ends here. And you can see that I've got a wall plate hanging instead of an outlet prepped. And the reason for that is that I'm planning a heated towel bar. And the heated towel bars are nice. The way they're set up is they've got a couple of legs that sit against the wall, and then where they screw into the wall, one of the legs has a kind of a pass-through feed for the electrical cable that goes right into a J-box. So if you hang it right and you put it like right here, it's not going to be a very wide unit. I'm just going to put one right there. One leg would literally sit right on that J-box, and all the wiring is there hidden so that you're not plugging into an outlet. Just a nice little feature. If you plan ahead, these are the kinds of things you can have in your build too. Let's go back and look at a little bit more plumbing, and then I'll close this out. Not too much else to report, but so coming in from the floor here, you can see we've got our main water feed in, and that's actually about to get moved. I initially stubbed that in there and realized that I wanted to move it inboard. It's actually going to be about where my finger's pointing through the floor. And the reason for that is that that is actually above where the water pipe comes out of the ground. and I didn't want to like snake it around outside. Everything outside is subject to freezing. I do have heat tape wrapped around the pipe with a lot of pipe insulation, and that should be able to keep the thing going for a while. But just to be safe, I don't want anything more exposed than it has to be. So this pucks here is pretty frost resistant anyway, even if the heat pipe failed, or heat tape. My experience with our camper has been that this PEX will stretch a little bit and not burst. So it's, an emergency backup plan. It's nice to have the PEX. But this will come up out of the floor here. That is a whole house pump. It is one of the worst ever made. Really, really cheap. I think it was $70 on Amazon. I have seen reviews of them, and they are insanely noisy. But I'm just trying to get past inspections. We are completely out of money and can't spend a dime more than we absolutely have to get past our inspections here. So that was just a cheap thing. We're not getting enough water pressure down from the cistern to feed the house. We're only getting 7 PSI down here when the system's fully primed. So that pump will help boost and provide the 30 PSI to feed the house. What's weird over here, and this may seem a little odd, is that there's a little bit of a stub pipe sticking up, and the reason is that there will be a valve and a funnel here that is to prime the system. Before you get water down in that pipe, it really doesn't have enough of a siphon effect to pull down from the cistern, and it won't just drain down. The pipe the tube just floats around in the cistern and doesn't want to fill. So until you get the thing going, there's nothing there. And I wanted to be able to have an inlet so that I could get some water into the system this direction and help prime it before kicking that pump on. That pump is self-priming, but not very much. I think it's got a head draw of like 15 feet or something like that. It's not enough to pull 100 feet of air through the pipe all the way down from the cistern in order to feed itself. Expansion tank. You need an expansion tank when you have what's known as a closed system. Reason being, hot water in the system will heat up and expand and push back down the pipe. And it'll want to actually come back down the cold pipe all the way back out the system. But there's a check valve in here. So there's a check valve preventing the pressure that's developed from this pump from going backward down the pipe and back up into the cistern. And that you want that there. That's what we want so that we keep 30 PSI in the pipes in the house. But because that's not supplied by city water or anything else, that heated water that comes out of the water heater here and back down into the system needs a place to go. If it can't go out a faucet because no faucet is on, then the system can actually rupture. It can burst and cause all kinds of problems. So what this does here is it provides a little expansion room so that that has a spot to go. And this should be big enough size for a system. I'm kind of overbuilding a few things. This is a commercial grade hot water heater rated for almost 200,000 BTUs per hour. 199. I don't know why they wouldn't go for the last one, but eBay scratch and dent. So this was new. I don't believe it's ever been run because some of the fittings show signs of never having been installed. But at the same time, I'm really crossing my fingers hoping it works. We couldn't afford a brand new one, and this was a good eBay find. So you can see I've started to stub this in here. I've got the shutoff valves and service unions and everything. This will be pressure relief. That'll go down through a hole in the floor. This is the hot water that'll go up over the system. And then obviously there's cold water intake, and this is gas. I'm working on installing that now. That'll be a 3/4 gas line. I got 3/4 gas coming into the house, but then 1/2 inch run out to the stove, the what will eventually be a fireplace feature, and the furnace, as well as the generator. So all of those will be on 1/2 inch because they just don't need very much. The hot water heater is rated for 200,000 BTUs, which is higher than 1/2 inch. Black pipe can handle it, but the flex can't. And I didn't want to mess with exactly fitting service unions. I'm not cutting and, threading my own black pipe here. So just kind of using the nipples that you can get, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch off the shelf. You're never going to get a perfect makeup. And I wanted a flex hose here in order to make it really easy to get in and out and service the thing. So you can see I've already got a drip leg starting to form here. And this will come down. There will be a valve here that goes down to the floor and down and out and over to where the gas comes in the building. Finally, on the supply side of the plumbing, I've got this manifold here. I may actually move it over just a little bit. You can see I'm getting a little tight on this, and all I'd have to do is to move it is just cut that stub and redo that one stub. So I think that I will probably end up moving this over a few inches and adding a little bit more backer here. Just to give myself a little bit more clearance to the water heater with the cold water lines on this side. You can see what I'm doing is I'm coming off with these elbows, and I'm just kind of, starting to tap them up so that I can have some nice clean runs. I'm going to just kind of curve and flex the pecs the rest of the way, but down here it would have made a rat's nest and given me much larger bends, made it harder to kind of lay everything out. So I really wanted to get, these are really nice high flow elbows here, and I'm pretty happy with how that came out. On the vent side, we looked at this from outside. I know it looks like a bit of a mess down here, so if I can't get a really good camera angle, but this is the DWV, so that's a vent. This is the intake for the hot water heater, and that's the exhaust. So all of those are rated to be PVC, Schedule 40, and this is coming down here from the roof, kind of tapped over, and you can see there's a line that runs that way behind those intake and exhaust, and one that runs down here. And this kind of dog legs around the water heater to give it the clearance that it required, and then runs down along the side here and through that wall over into the kitchen. This line here runs along the wall. You can see it slopes down, so it has a bit of a droop to it. That's on purpose. It has to have a 1/4 inch a foot slope. We got a sanity here. When you do them on the vent side, you put them in backwards. That's not an accident. You put them in upside down, or however you want to think of upside down. And that's just to encourage any moisture or water to drain out the way it's supposed to. And this comes down here. You can see I've got what's known as a solvent well P-trap. This is a P-trap you don't expect to get into the wall to service because that's feeding the washer dryer box. So this is the laundry box here. It's just a nice little pre-made unit. This is a test plug, so this is going to come out here. But I have it in for right now so that I can seal the system and show that it holds a few PSI of pressure so there are no leaks in the drain. And the washer dryer hookup will be here. If you're wondering why you don't have one of those big, massive dryer outlets, like those big 50 amp, it's because we've decided to go with one of the hybrid systems. I know they've gotten bad reviews in the past, but they have come a long way. They're a lot better now and a lot more efficient. And they only take 120. You could see, I've got a 15 amp outlet on there, but I have run 12 gauge over here as well, just in case I need to upsize that and put a 20 in and be able to run the washer off that. And then that drops down through the floor here, so these are our drains. Last but not least, that pipe that comes down along the ceiling kind of takes a couple of dog legs over here. And the reason I did that instead of going through the joist was because I was getting kind of low. I did have a long run and a lot of drop coming this direction. And if I had gone through the joist, I would have had to notch the bottoms instead of drilling through, which is not really what you want to be doing. You want to be drilling through the center third of it and not more than a certain distance. But more important, this is a load-bearing wall. So remember we talked about this braced wall panel over here? This is load bearing, and what it's doing is not only stiffening the house this direction, but also bearing some roof loads down to the main beam that's under the center of the house right here. So I didn't really want to be cutting any of this stuff more than necessary. I did put a few holes in it for electrical, but they're well within spec and they're very small, so they're not really affecting the strength very much. Plus, this is all overbuilt anyway. But coming down here with the plumbing, I decided that I was going to pull it out and drop it through the wall, and then we'll put a soffit or more likely a drop ceiling in. And then with the drop ceiling, we'll have some access to this plenum here in case we ever need to do any wiring later. This will give us easy access to get over to the office, to the guest bath, and all the rest of that stuff to get upstairs and to be able to run things around the house. So a drop ceiling is probably a smart thing to do here. Either way, I felt like coming out into the room space made a lot of sense. And what this is doing is feeding a sink port for a utility sink. So just reviewing, we're going to have a utility sink in the corner, a corner cabinet. That pipe is going away. I'm just storing it. And the washer dryer is going to go over here. So it'll be a nice room to be able to work in and get around and have plenty of room for laundry as well as other things. Maybe even washing the dogs, who knows, any of that kind of stuff. And the utility sink was just a must-have. So I'm going to wrap this video here. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. And when I pick back up next time, hopefully I will have the bulk of the plumbing done for the master and the guest and be wrapping up and prepping for the inspections on the plumbing side. Obviously, I've got to get the PEX in, but I'm hoping against hope that that goes relatively quickly. I've got a lot of the fittings. I'm pretty used to working with PEX, and there aren't as many mysteries there. So it's really just a question of how I want to do the routing and where I want to drill holes. Honestly, that's my biggest debate, is like deciding where I want the holes to go. So stay with us. Thanks for watching. And in the next episode, hopefully we'll have either the plumbing almost done or just about getting there.